Okay, hi everyone. Hope you're doing well. Welcome back to another session of Cafe Oleh. Apologies for it not taking place 2 weeks ago, but unfortunately, the events of the day prevented us from doing it respectfully and making sure that everyone was safe. Thank God we have a ceasefire that we hope will hold. So in the meantime, we're back, and it was also Shavuot last week. So we're glad to be back. My name is Jay Rosen. I'm a volunteer with Nefesh B'Nefesh. I myself made Aliyah with them more than 14 years ago. And here at Cafe Oleh, for those of you who are new and you're just joining us, we go over the Hebrew that we use in everyday life. It may or may not be taught in Ulpan, Israel's traditional intensive way to teach Hebrew to new immigrants. It may not be the way that you learned Hebrew, but it's the Hebrew that we use in everyday life here in Israel. And the idea being that making Aliyah already comes with a whole lot of challenges, and especially coming from North America and the UK, we want to be sure that you can adjust to life in a way that's both understanding where you're coming from, but also understanding the differences that are here. So the everyday, mundane, I would say, white-collar, middle-class things like going grocery shopping or paying bills or keeping up with the news are the things we go over in this class. It's very much, we have a variety of different backgrounds and people's level of Hebrew in this class, but it's primarily intro. So also being a webinar, it's going to be much more frontal. If you do have questions while I'm going through today's lesson, please write them in the Q&A. And please restrict what you write in the Q&A to just a question. I hope to get to as many of them as possible. If you want to critique my English, if you want to critique my Hebrew, please leave that for the chat. We really want to keep the Q&A just for your questions. And the other thing about Cafe Oleh is we really try to make this as user-friendly as possible. So if you have topics that you'd like us to go over that we haven't done in the past, please write them in the Q&A. We'll be happy to go over different topics that you want to hear about and you want to learn about together. Also, you'll get a recording of this on Nefesh B'Nefesh's YouTube account, and we have all the previous lessons uploading there as well. So we've done a whole bunch of different topics in the past. Please review, please go over. You can watch it at your leisure. If you can't keep up with the class today, although I try to go as slow as possible, you can always review on Nefesh B'Nefesh's YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com, type in Nefesh B'Nefesh, you'll find us there. So with that, we're going to go over a topic that we've gone over in the past, but we're going to do a little bit more of a zoom out review of it, which is grocery shopping. We've done this in the past. We've gone over ingredient labels and nutritional value labels in the past. Again, please go to the YouTube channel to see those past recordings. Today, I want to do a little bit more of a zoom out, though, like I said, a meta, if you will, look at shopping in Israel and sort of just take sort of the basics of shopping in Israel. I know for some of you, this may be intro, for some of you not, but I think it's really important, especially coming from developed countries. You're already, or at least are hopefully, informed consumers. You know where to shop, when to shop, what to buy, how to find a sale, and so forth. The same things apply here in Israel. It just takes a little bit of difference in geography and obviously words as well. So I'm about to share my screen. You can follow along, you can take screenshots. Again, you'll get a copy of this. It'll be uploaded to Nefesh B'Nefesh's YouTube channel in the next day or so you can follow along and go over it as you would like. And obviously, any questions, again, Q&A. So with that, let me just open up the list of vocab for today. Just 1 second. Let's see if I can do it. There we go. Share. Okay, so as always, for those of you who either have forgotten or are new here, I come up with the vocabulary list for the day. On the right-hand side is the Hebrew with the bars and dots that indicate vowel sounds called nikud. The transliteration for more American English-centric audiences in the middle, and the left is English, as well as the notes on the far left. And we're going to go through each of these together, so don't worry. This isn't, the point of these classes also is I'm not a dictionary, human or otherwise. I really want to go over words and ideas that you can't necessarily look up and figure out on your own, much less assume that your Hebrew teacher is going to teach you them. So I want to start first with words that have to do with places where you go to shop. There's plenty more that I didn't include here, but I want to include the big ones, especially when we're talking about grocery shopping. Okay, so the first one here is duchan. Duchan is probably the most basic word that we have. Duchan is a stand, but it's any kind of stand. Think of like those of you who are familiar with malls, the stands where the Israeli, 20-somethings are selling Dead Sea products, that's a duchan. A duchan is any freestanding table, stand like that. It could be inside a place, it could be outside. That's what we talk about when we say duchan. Okay, but really the most basic unit of shopping in Israel is done in a chanut. A chanut, our second word here, row 3, is any kind of store. Okay, it can be a grocery store, it can be a clothing store, it can be a hardware store. Any kind of store is a chanut. Absolute basic store. Now, furthering that is, and I apologize, I also see I didn't put gender in these words. Let me just go through these again. Duchan up here is masculine. Chanut is feminine. The next word is makolet. Makolet is feminine, and this refers to what we would best translate as a grocery store. Okay, this isn't a big store. This is a neighborhood store. Think of like a grocery store in the sense of we use it as a smaller neighborhood. Get your sundries, your basic essentials in this kind of store. It's not a big store at all. And what's important with this word, just like all Hebrew words, and we've talked about this before, Hebrew grammar, Hebrew language is a very conservative language. We have a very finite amount of words, but we can create all sorts of new words based on the shoresh. The shoresh, or the shoresh, depending on how you say the letter resh, means root. And every Hebrew word has a root of 2, 3, or 4 letters. This word makolet is related to the word kol. Kol in Hebrew means all or everything. And the idea of when we take that root kol, with kol, and we plug it into this framework, this specific type of word that we have here, we understand it's a place, it's a location, and that root helps us understand what kind of place it is. So we understand a makolet is a place that has everything, right? It's back in the days in Israel, we didn't have large grocery stores, aka supermarket, which we're about to get to. We had small stores, neighborhood stores. We didn't have big, think wherever you're from in the world, but especially outside of Israel, right? North America, UK, we didn't have big size grocery stores here. Supermarkets, we had small grocery stores. So that's the idea. A makolet is where you can buy hakol, everything. The next word, yalkan, is another kind of store. And it's usually just called a yalkan or a yarkan. And this is the equivalent in many of your countries to a greengrocer. Okay, a greengrocer is a store that exclusively sells fruits and vegetables. They only sell that. And typically what's very important here is a little bit of consumer advice. I know a lot of people who still to this day, many years after making Aliyah, will will go to a greengrocer, will go to a makolet. A yalkan, a greengrocer, and a makolet, a grocery store, are typically more expensive than what we're going to get to, a supermarket. They're typically more expensive because they're oftentimes independently owned. They source their goods from a variety of places, but usually economically it's a smaller operation and the cost is transferred over to the consumer. I would say that's especially true of the greengrocer, the yalkan. They may have more of a variety of produce that you are more used to having, but the price is usually more expensive than a makolet or a supermarket. So just keep that in mind. I know a lot of people who still buy at a yalkan, and I remember doing that when I first made Aliyah and lived in Jerusalem, and I would go to the local yalkan because I couldn't be bothered to run to the supermarket or to the shuk, and we'll get to that word shortly. So I went to the yalkan, and I ended up buying, I think it was a box of spinach, because I really I felt like I was going to make spinach that day. And then I went to the supermarket shortly afterwards. The price at the yalkan was at least twice the amount. Okay, so some competitive shopping is going to be important when you are here in Israel. and you can size up your different options. But a Yelkan typically, not always, before everyone shouts at me saying that their Yelkan is inexpensive, right? Typically is more expensive than the other kinds of stores. Let's move on to the one that you're most familiar with in your countries of origin. We now have here more in abundance in Israel is the super. The super or the super is how we say it in Hebrew, or here in Israel rather, is the supermarket. Okay, it comes from the word in English, that's how we call it. We have a bunch of chains. We have different kinds of superim, and that's usually how we pluralize it, superim. A super in a city, within a city, like here in Tel Aviv, is a decent sized store. It's not going to be a mega sized store. Only recently in Israel do we have what would be termed a mega sized supermarket, like you may be familiar with, especially in North America. We don't have Costco or Sam's Club or bulk size of that manner, but we do have large grocery stores. They usually are car dependent, or they're outside of cities in an industrial area that you need public transportation or a car to get to. They're usually not within walking distance of residential areas. So that's also going to be an adjustment for many of you if you haven't made Aliyah already, to keep in mind that the large supermarkets you may be used to in your countries of origin don't really exist in Israel. Certainly not bulk, because remember, apartments and houses in Israel are much smaller than you're probably used to. And second, people are used to a different way of life in terms of stocking up on products. It's more of a thing to go to your local makolet, your local grocery store, to buy things. Also, because there's so much fresh produce, you can often buy it regularly throughout the week rather than one big haul, as you may be used to. And also remember, not everyone has a car here in Israel, although certainly in Tel Aviv, it certainly feels like that was. Okay, so we did makolet, chanut, yelkan, super. Now we get to the next one, shuk. Shuk is, it's masculine. Shuk is specifically an open air market. Okay, there are plenty of shvakim, that's the plural, of shvakim that have covered areas. You can think of Machane Yehuda in Jerusalem, HaKarmel or Hatikva here in Tel Aviv. All major cities have a shuk. Part of it is outdoors, part of it is indoors, but the idea is it's a market that has an open air feel to it. It's not a closed building. It may have closed buildings inside of its compound, but a shuk is an open air market, very traditional to the Middle East. It's a cognate throughout the Middle East in Arabic, in other languages throughout the region. Everyone has a shuk, and here as well in Israel. Sometimes things are cheaper in a shuk, sometimes they're not. It really depends where you are, which shuk you are at, and also what day of the week it is, what time of day it is. Often as it gets later in the day, things get cheaper because the produce needs to be sold off or otherwise thrown out. Beginning of the week, so right after Shabbat, usually the produce has not been replenished quite yet after the mad rush before Shabbat. So a shuk is also a great place to go. Obviously, the shuk scene, and we call it a scene because it very much is here in Tel Aviv or in Jerusalem, have become much more than just a shuk. There's also restaurants and cafes inside. There's also nightlife. It's a really important part of Middle Eastern life and certainly Israeli life in all the major cities, and even small cities have ones. The shuk, for example, in the city of Ramla is considered very famous and has all sorts of culinary delicacies you can't find elsewhere. Ramla, for example, is home to a large population, of Indian Jews. So there's a lot of Indian groceries and restaurants around the shuk. It's a lot of fun. And by the way, this word shuk is important in Hebrew because we use it, and again, that shoresh, that 2, 3, or 4 letters create all sorts of new words. So here's a very modern word that didn't obviously exist when Hebrew got started 5,000 years ago, is shivuk, right? We took the word shuk, we turned it into a shoresh, and from it we created the word for marketing, right? Marketing, like marketing a product, is shivuk. Lishavek is to market something, and shivuk is marketing, right? Like a marketing department in a company or marketing services, any of that is the word shivuk. Very important, especially here in Israel, high-tech startups, shivuk is very important. And within a shuk, right, we had that word duchan before, a stall. Within a shuk in Israel, we call those stalls, the individual owners of all of those different places, a basta. Basta comes not from Spanish or Ladino, as is often told. In Spanish, basta means enough. It actually comes from Arabic. It has to do with spreading out the goods or spreading out merchandise or getting merchandise distributed. So that's where this term is, and you'll hear this term used quite a lot. The bastot, it's a feminine word, so the plural is bastot. Also because a shuk in Israel has become a real it seemed to be at. So a lot of restaurants and cafes will call themselves something basta. Here in Tel Aviv, we have a restaurant called Ha-Basta, The Stand. It actually sits just outside of the Carmel, Shuka Carmel, the Carmel market. It's a very nice restaurant, quite expensive. And then you have a chain that's sort of out of Jerusalem called Pasta Basta. And as the name sounds, they sell pasta outside of the, from a basta, from inside the shuk. It's popular in Jerusalem. It's now here in Tel Aviv. It's quite fun. Really nice places, all of these things. Okay, so that's the sort of geography of some of the major stores. Again, we didn't go through all of them, but these are sort of the major ones that we're talking about when we do, talking about where you're going to buy things. Now get into a little bit of economics. We're going to do some more economics shortly, but I want to start with some few here. First is a very important word that we get to, you'll hear a lot in Israel, is mivtza. Mivtza, row 12 here, is a sale. Okay, it's a sale, thinking not the act of selling something, but it is a sale, like a discount on something. It also means, by the way, as I wrote here on the left-hand side, a military operation. So you won't normally get confused by it. You'll understand the difference. If a store has a mivtza, they're not advertising a military operation. They're advertising, they're having a sale on something. Okay, so a mivtza is masculine. It means a sale. And what happens in a sale? They're offering you a hanacha. Hanacha is a feminine word, and it means a discount. Okay, so a store that's offering a mivtza, a chanut, a store, right, that's offering a mivtza sale has a hanacha, has a discount. And the discount could be all different kinds. One of the sales that you'll often see is exclusively for Moadon HaLekochot, row 14. Moadon HaLekochot is the customers club, is the members club, is anyone who signs up for that store's club gets extra access to sales. Sorry, just 1 second, getting a lot of text, just need to make sure that everything's all right with work. Customers Club, Moadon Lekochot, all the major national chains have a Moadon Lekochot. So one of the biggest supermarkets, Shufelsal, has their own Moadon Lekochot. Another national chain, Tivtam, has their own Moadon Lekochot. Some of these cost money, most of them are free, and it's a combination of giving you discounts or extra discounts or heads up on upcoming sales and events. Some of it is also just sheer marketing on their side, right? They want to see what you buy, and every time you go to the register, you'll give your customer club your Moadon Lekochot, and you'll get discounts, but they'll also give you coupons and further discounts based on what you're buying. That also helps them figure out what they need to stock and what you're interested in seeing. Sorry, just 1 second. So Moadon Lekochot is very important. It's very good to research where you're living at where the nearest one has. Like I said, the big stores, the nationwide chains all have their own Moadon Lekochot. Some of them are free, some of them are not. For example, Shufelcel is free. I believe Super Farm, which is the national, which is the biggest drugstore chain and toiletries chain, also has a free one. There are some that cost money, like Victory, which is the discount supermarket chain. Tivtam, which is the national chain that is also open on Shabbat and sells non-kosher products, most recently is giving away their Moadon Lekochot for free. Otherwise, it does cost an annual fee. But a very important one, you should sign up for them based on where you are and where you frequently shop to see. This next one I added as an example of shivuk, of marketing, as we said, but also a hanacha, a discount that you see very, very often in Israel, is buy one, get the second for 50%. Or the way it's usually advertised is here, hasheni b'chamishim achuz. Sheni, the second, chamishim, 50, achuz percent. Okay, so you put this all together, hasheni, the second product, b'chamishim achuz. And you see this a lot, right? Buy one, get one, 50%. Now, the savvy consumers in our audience today know that's actually not quite a great deal. It means that you have to buy two of something and you're paying 75% of the total price rather than what it may sound like. But this is used very often. Keep in mind in Israel, and this is an important thing when you move here, or if you're already here and you haven't figured this out yet, financial intelligence, economic intelligence, home ec, things that perhaps used to get taught in your countries of origin or maybe still aren't really taught here. And there's a lot of news in the last recent years about teaching students, teaching younger people before they go off to the army and before they go to the university about teaching things like banking and savings and home ec and finances and things like that. And it's evidenced in the fact by a lot of things in the economic situation of Israel and the average Israeli. But one of them is this, that this sale you see very often. And the shop owners are very pushy to get you to buy it. But financially, like it doesn't make as much sense to buy hasheni b'chamishim achuz unless you really like this product. Or there's a variety of products that fall into this category. You're really only getting the price at 75% discount. 75% of its total value. You really are only, so it's not a great steal, but I trust you to be savvy consumers. Okay, so let's go through some basic ingredients or basic elements of the food that you're going to be buying. Again, we've done a lesson before on reading ingredients and reading nutritional value labels, which again are standardized here in Israel. You have to have it on the back of products that are sold, of food products. These are the general words that you're always going to find. Obviously, there are more things, nutritional values that you can look up on your own, but these are the basics that are really important to know. If you just go into a supermarket right now or a grocery store and are looking at a product, what exactly I'm looking at, if anything. I'm trying to figure it out in Hebrew. Also, very important, not only is there a label on it, but in Israel, the law is all packaging must have Hebrew on it. If it's in Arabic, it can also be in Arabic, but it needs to be in one of the two state languages, which are Hebrew and Arabic. If a product is imported, and it's originally from the US or the UK, chances are the Hebrew language label will be glued on top of it. Okay, so for those of my fellow Olim who get frustrated, why is this product, it's Aquafresh from America, why does the product have only in Hebrew? Or it's in multiple languages from Europe, but not in English. This is part of the reason why. It's a law in Israel, all labeling on edible products must have Hebrew on it, and that trumps all other languages. Okay, Arabic is this next one, but chances are where you will be living here in Israel, you won't regularly see Arabic packaging, although you certainly might in the, what we say, mixed cities like Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and Haifa. You definitely might. Okay, so let's go through some basic elements of food products and their Hebrew equivalents. Calories. Calories is one of those great words we know a lot, we follow a lot, but we in Hebrew do not have, sorry, just a second, we do not have a word that's frequently used that's Hebrew. we use a cognate. We use one of two cognates. Either energia, from the word energy, which is often how it's referred to in European countries, energia, or the English caloriot. Okay, so energia, caloriot, both of them mean calories. Okay, so if you're looking for the calorie count, this is the word that you're going to be looking for. Either of these words, sometimes both are on the label together. Sometimes it's just one or the other. Another important word, basic food stuff that you need is chelbon. Chelbon is the word in Hebrew for protein. It comes from the root chet lamed bet. If you look over here on the right-hand side, chet lamed bet, its first three letters. And that word may sound very familiar to some of you. We get the word chalav, milk, from that. Keeping in mind that for centuries, if not millennia, Hebrew speakers, i.e. Jews, got most of their protein from dairy products, not from meat. Okay, so that's a very important point, that protein, we refer to all kinds of protein, right? Meat-based protein, dairy, vegetable-based proteins. But the word that we use, chelbon, its original source comes from the same source as chalav, milk, meaning dairy products. Okay, but protein is all kinds of protein, falls under the term chelbon in Hebrew. Okay, the next one, you probably know what the next word is going to be, that after you do calories and protein, the next thing that usually appears on a nutritional label, but I want to explain that word by two other things that come in that word, which are the elements. This is one of my favorite lessons to give because I love seeing the face on fellow Olim when I tell them that Hebrew has its own words for the elements, right? This is a living language. This is not just the language that you are familiar with through prayer and Tanakh and millennia of tradition. It's a living language for 20th, 21st century life. That includes the hard sciences, that includes the elements. So why do I bring that up? To get to the next nutritional value, I have to teach you two words. The first word is pachman, and the second word is meiman. The first word, row 19, pachman, is, sorry, just 1 second, I'm getting a call here. Sorry, just 1 minute. Hello? הגעת? מתי קבענו? אז עדיף שכן, אני פשוט באמצע פגישה בזום עכשיו. תודה. אוקיי. Sorry about that. Life in post-corona, a shaliach, a delivery person is supposed to come. Okay, and want to come early. Kind of a bit of a surprise. Anyways, first word, pachman. Pachman is the Hebrew word for carbon, the element carbon, okay? From this word, we get a lot of different words, and we're about to do one of them right now, but pachman is an important word. It's an element, carbon, you know that. It has the same root as the word pecham. Pecham in Hebrew is charcoal, and it's related to the town in Israel called el-Fahim. El-Fahim, or pronounced in modern Hebrew, el-Fahim, is the largest Muslim city in Israel. It's not the largest Arab city, that's Nazareth. The largest Muslim city is el-Fahim, and it comes from the exact same root that we have here, right? Pecham, pachman, fahim in Arabic, or Facham, in how we would say in Israel, means the same thing in Arabic, in Hebrew, and in Arabic. And the idea is that the area around this town up in the north was a center for charcoal production, usually through trees, would create charcoal. So it literally means the mother of charcoal. It's a really cool name, and it comes into Hebrew as well. So pecham, it's a cognate, it means charcoal in Hebrew. Pachman is carbon, because what is charcoal but just carbon, right? It's all that carbon fused together. And the second word that's important to know is meiman. Meiman is the Hebrew word for hydrogen, right? Again, elements, we need our own words. Some of the words are cognates, some of them are not. This is one that is not because it's so abundant, is meiman. Meiman is hydrogen. It obviously, if you can hear in its, in the way I say it, but also how it's spelled, meiman, comes from the word mayim, right? Because what is mayim? Water. H2O, right? Those two hydrogen molecules for every oxygen molecule, H2O. So meman, it gets us understanding, just like, by the way, the word that we have in English, hydrogen, that hydro indicates its connection to water. So when we put these two words together, pachman and meman, we get row 21, pachmemot, right? We took these two words, we fused them together, and we created just what a carbohydrate is. Carbo, carbon, pachman, hydrate, hydrogen, meman. We fuse them together. In English, we fuse it together to get the word carbohydrate. In Hebrew, we do the exact same thing and get pachmemot. Okay, it's a really awesome aspect, I think very awesome, of modern Hebrew, that we can create words very easily that also are, how should we say, accessible for Indo-European speakers, but are also very Hebrew and very Middle Eastern, very Semitic in nature. So pachmemot is our next nutritional value that we're often looking for, is carbohydrates. Okay, great word to know. Next few words, natran. Natran is another element, obviously. This is sodium. Obviously, this is not salt. Just like when you look at a nutritional label in your respective country, or wherever you're from, natran, it never usually says just salt. Under the nutritional values, it'll say sodium, because the sodium can come from various sources, not just table salt. So natran is, or natran, is the Hebrew word for sodium. It's also a cognate, I believe, from Latin. The next word is sidan. Sidan is calcium. By the way, you can hear, but part of this is very important to pick up if you aren't picking this up already. Pachman, meman, natran, sidan. That pattern of the vowels and the final nun of each of those words indicates, not always, but already gives you a sense of what those words are. So if you come across something that sounds like that, and it's in the context of molecules, chemistry, nutrition in this case, you can venture a good guess that it has something to do with an element, right? All of them follow a very specific pattern or a variation on a pattern. Pachman, meman, natran, sidan. Not all elements do this, but enough of them do that it constitutes a form of a pattern. That's good to know. And the last one, when we're talking about ingredients, and again, I'm not going into all ingredients. You can look many of these up on their own. I just want to point out a few unique things about ingredients. This is a very important word that you're going to find again and again and again. And this is one of the most important words perhaps in this lesson for today, because it applies to so many other places and so many contexts for using Hebrew, is the word lelo. Lelo comes from the word lo. Lo means no. Lelo means without, as I wrote here. It can mean non, dash, it can also mean dash free, right? Anytime you want to indicate something non or free or without, you're going to use this word lilo. So for example, Tel Aviv, where I live, its slogan, it's more a slogan than a nickname, is Ir, or Ir lelo hafsaka. Ir is a city. Lelo hafsaka. Hafsaka is a break or a stop. So in Ir lelo hafsaka, the non-stop city, or a city without a stop, or a city without a break. It's trying to build itself as a non-stop city, right? Like New York, like London, other global cities. Lelo, so for example, if you need to look for certain ingredients that are or are not included in your, based on your diet or your nutritional needs, you're gonna look for this word lelo. So for example, if you cannot eat gluten, you're gonna look for lelo gluten, right? I'm not putting all food allergies up on here, you can look these up, but just what you're gonna look for, if you're looking for what something doesn't contain, this is what you're gonna look for. Lelo gluten, gluten-free. Lelo sukar, without sugar. Lelo melach, without salt. Okay, lelo is gonna be a very important word in a lot of different contexts here in Israel. Very important word to know. Okay, Now I want to get through some other words that are good as a savvy consumer, where exactly your food is coming from, or what products you're buying at a chanut or a super or a yalkan or a shuk are coming from. And some of these words I know are not taught in Ulpan, but these are, 21st century economics. You should know some of these words anyways. The first word is miyuba. Miyuba means imported. It's an adjective, it's masculine here. Miyuba comes from the verb to import, which also comes from the verb to go, to come, right? To import means to bring in something, and it comes from the verb lavo. Lavo means to come. So the idea is this is something that is being brought in. It's coming to us, miyuba. Its opposite is miyutsa, exported, and the noun for export is our next word, yitsu. Yitsu comes from the same root as latzet, to go out. Those of you with a strong Jewish background, you know Yetziat Mitzrayim, the exodus from Egypt, the leaving of Egypt. It's related to this word here. Yitsu means export. And you will actually see often in Israel, when you go to a makolet or a supel or a yalkan, the packaging will have English on it, and it will say export quality. Why? Because a lot of Israel's produce, its fruits and vegetables, are grown to be exported to other markets, primarily to Europe, but to other markets as well. So yitsu is very important in terms of knowing not just the opposite of import, but on its own, why you're going to see a lot of things. For example, I'll give you a great example. My local makolet, when you buy celery as it's pre-washed, pre-cut, it's still connected to its root, but it's still just the stalks. It's not with the leaves on top. It comes in a plastic bag, and it's got a lot of English on it, and it says in English, export quality. It doesn't necessarily say where it's coming from, and that's important unfortunately, for some markets to make sure that it doesn't say product of Israel, but it's still understood this is meant for a global consumer. It just happens to be oversold, or for whatever reason, there's extra amount to be resold here in Israel. Here's another word that's important for you if you want to know where products are made. For some of you, that may be about ethical consumerism. If you want to buy more from Israel and so forth, is the word totzeret. Totzeret or totzeret means product of, right? So if you're looking for products that are made in Israel, they will say totzeret haaretz or totzeret Israel. Totzeret haaretz means literally the land, but when we say haaretz in Israel, we're referring to Israel. Just like Eretz Israel, we just simply say haaretz. Okay, totzeret can be anywhere. So if you're looking for where a product is made, this is what you're going to look for, and it'll say next to it in Hebrew where it's from. Some countries have their own names in Hebrew, some don't. Again, you can look those up quite easily. A word that's related to product, totzeret, is miyutzal. Miyutzal is an adjective, and it means processed or manufactured. Okay, miyutzal really does mean processed in the sense of manufacturing something. Manufactured at or manufactured in. So those, for example, who have allergies and are looking to make sure that something isn't manufactured or produced in a place that contains other allergens, right? It'll say on the label, miyutzal b'mif'al. Mif'al is a factory, and that's where you're going to look for the allergens, part of the allergen issues, if you have those. Okay, miyutzal is a very important word. Another word that's related but quite different in actual meaning is me'ubad. Both of these words can be translated as processed or produced, but me'ubad specifically has to do with something that's artificial, right? So if something is an artificial food or an artificial flavor, it'll say me'ubad. Okay, so gvina me'ubedet. Gvina is cheese. Gvina me'ubedet, which is the feminine version of me'ubad, is processed cheese, right? Think like the classic Velveeta from Kraft. That is processed cheese. That's the word me'ubad. We also have another kind here, but that's what we mean most specifically when we talk about processed foods, meaning artificial foods. We have another word for artificial, but when you see the word me'ubad, it means processed in the sense of it's not natural. That's as somewhat in opposite to our next word here, row 31, chomel gelem or chomer gelam. Chomel is a material, any kind of material, and gelem refers to something that's whole. So putting it together, chomel gelem is what we say for a raw ingredient or a raw product or raw material. So for example, you'll see this a lot, especially with the whole farm to table movement that's here in Israel. We're also talking about how fresh produce is. They'll talk a lot about chomrei gelem, the raw products, the raw ingredients that make up our restaurant or make up our menu or make up what we sell here. So if that's important to you, this is an important word. Where are the raw ingredients sourced, or that they contain actual raw ingredients and where they're from and what's their quality? This is a very trendy word now in Israel, just like it is in other places. And this last word in this category, I need to move a little bit faster because we have more to cover, is a very important word that you're not going to be able to look up just very quickly in a dictionary, is pikuach. Now, pikuach means supervision. It is related, obviously, to the term pikuach nefesh, preserving of a soul, which is a Jewish religious stricture that you can perform pikuach Shabbat. You actually are required to perform saving of someone's life on Shabbat, even if it means violating the Shabbat laws. But pikuach means supervision, supervising, watching over. This is the term that we use in Hebrew for food products that are under government subsidy, right? So we have certain products like certain types of bread, cheese, milk, and salt and sugar and flour that the price is fixed by the government to ensure that all people, regardless of socioeconomic level, can purchase it. And that price is affixed by the government. There are obviously versions that fall outside of the pikuach, especially imported goods. Sometimes, though, imported goods also fall under pikuach. But there are certain foodstuffs in Israel whose price is fixed by the government. And that's what pikuach means. So when you go to a supermarket and you see a label next to certain products and it says pikuach memshalti, pikuach again is the supervision, memshalti is governmental, right? So under governmental supervision, that's indicating that this product has a fixed price that the store cannot change, right? So if something is fixed at a certain price, they can't mess with it. So that is, I don't know all of them off the top of my head, but that's certain kinds of milk, cheese, butter, salt, eggs, flour, sugar, if I didn't say that already, are under pikuach. Very important word for those of you just to understand the pricing of some things in Israel. Now I want to go through some very basic expressions using verbs. And the good thing about all of these words from row 34 to 38 is that there's no gender involved. I specifically made it for you so you didn't have to worry about gender. Some of it you're going to need to conjugate on your own, but for the sake of this section, these are all verbs that happen to not need to be conjugated because they all are in what we call the infinitive. Most of these are in the infinitive or they don't have a verb at all. Let's start the first. If you go to a shuk, or if you go to a supil or a makolet and you need to weigh something, you need to get it weighed, you have two ways to ask the shop owner to weigh something. The first way to say it, row 34 at the top, efshar or efshal lishkol li. Okay, efshal is the polite way to ask in Hebrew, could you or would you please do something? Or can you do something, please? Okay, but it's indicated it's very polite. And the other great thing about efshal is it's always followed by the infinitive verb. It doesn't need to be conjugated. Efshal stays as its own, and the verb that follows it is always the infinitive. You don't need to conjugate it. You don't need to worry about is it masculine or feminine, past, present, or future, none of that. Only in the infinitive. Efshal Lishkol means to weigh. And this has the exact same root as what you, I don't have one on me right now. Israel's currency is the shekel, hashekel. Shekel was a biblical weight of measurements. And remember, when we used to purchase things hundreds, thousands of years ago, it was by weight, right? You needed something that was equivalent to a weight. Shekel was a certain type of weight that, just like many other currencies around the world, turned into the bills and coins that we know today. So from that root, we get the word to weigh. It also means weights. It also means to weigh as in yourself, but also products. So efshar lishkol li, can you weigh this for me, please, is a very polite way to say to the shop's owner or the person behind the stand to weigh whatever it is that you want, produce, meat, whatever it is. The other way to do this, if you want to conjugate the verb, and again, you don't have to, is you would say, tishkol li bevakasha, to a man, or tishkeli li bevakasha, to a woman. Okay, so already I'm conjugating it for you, and it's in a form that we use as the command, right? You're asking someone to do something for you, but you're including that word bevakasha, please. So we're keeping it as polite as saying efshar lishkol li. You can say tishkoli bevakasha or tishkeli li bevakasha. If that's too complicated, just stick with efshar lishkol li, okay? You don't have to worry about conjugation. You don't have to worry about figuring out the gender to whom you're speaking. It's just efshar lishkol li. The next one, a very important one, efshar be'ashrai. Okay, all you need to do when you want to pay by credit card and you're not quite sure if you can or not is simply ask efshar, that question word again, be'ashrai. Ashrai means credit, as in a credit card or credit, financial credit. Okay, so efshar be'ashrai, those two words indicate, can I pay by credit card? That's all you need to ask, is efshar be'ashrai. In Israel, we're moving towards a cash-free society. It's going to take a long time, but there are certain places that by law have to allow you to pay by credit card, and oftentimes they don't, mainly because the fee of using a credit card is placed on the shop owner rather than you, and they don't want to pay it. So it's always worth asking, can you pay by a credit card, efshar be'ashrai, if that's what you prefer to do. Okay, another important question always is kama ze, or kama ze oleh. Kama means how much. It's used as a question, only as how much question mark. Kama ze is most of the time the only thing you need to say. Ze in Hebrew means this and that. It means this or that, this and that. I know it's a little tricky, but it means the same thing in Hebrew. Typically you're taught in formal education, you say kama ze oleh. Now you can say that and you'll be completely understood. When you say kama ze oleh, it means how much is this thing that you're referring to. But you can also say simply kama ze, and you'll be completely understood. In fact, you'll hear much more frequently in a more informal way, people asking shop owners, shop stewards, kama ze, how much is this, rather than kama ze oleh. It's the difference in English of saying how much is this versus how much does this cost. Right? You can certainly say how much does this cost, but typically we're just saying how much is this, and that's kama ze. Okay. Now we have two very important words to be savvy consumers, two verbs. Lehachlif is the first one, and it means to exchange, right? To exchange a product. In Israel, we have by law very generous return policies on things. Again, it depends on the store, the product of it, but every store has to also advertise when you buy something, how long you have to exchange a product, again, depending on what it is. Or lahachzir. Lahachzir means to return a product. Okay, we have the verb lachzor. Lachzor means to return, but that's not what we're talking about here. To return a product is lahachzir. It's a little bit more complicated than this class affords us, and maybe in the future we'll do a class, what's the difference in grammar between lachzor and lachzir. But just know if you want to return a product and you go to a store, you're going to say, for example, if I want to return my phone, I would say, Ani machzir et hapelefon sheli. I am returning my phone. Okay, so that's what it refers to as return and exchange. Again, Israel has very specific laws about returning and exchanging products. Every store has to advertise when they sell you something, as well as on the receipt, what its policy is. And then finally, before I get to the last few minutes when we have your questions, a very important thing. When we're talking about grocery shopping, we're often talking about food. And this is something I've talked about a lot, which is where you put the emphasis on the syllable in Hebrew. This is very important. And this will distinguish between modern Hebrew and the Hebrew perhaps that you know from your upbringing. Specifically, and I don't mean to slight or point people out, this is a major difference in the history of Hebrew language that separated it from the Hebrew that was being spoken by Jews in Eastern Europe, Ashkenazim, is where is the emphasis on the syllable. And here we have two words, you see on the right-hand side, they are spelled exactly alike, Aleph, Vav, Chaf, Lamed. And if you didn't see their nikud, those dots that indicate the vowels, and you won't because they aren't normally written, you could pronounce these either as ochel, ochel, the emphasis is on the first syllable, or ochel, ochel, the emphasis is on the second syllable. And depending if you say ochel or ochel, you're saying two related, but two very different words. Ochel, as you see here in row 40, with the accent on the O to indicate that's where the emphasis is. Ochel is the catch-all word in Hebrew for food, right? Any kind of food is ochel. But what you do with food is you ochel, is you eat it. Ochel is the verb, is the I, you, he eats in the present tense, ochel. So you could have a sentence in Hebrew that says, Hu ochel et ha'ochel. He eats the food. Now, in English, we have some examples of this, and it's considered very bad English, right? He eats the eat. He eats the eats. Or something along the lines where the noun or the object is so similar to the verb that it's considered bad form English. In Hebrew, again, we have a very conservative amount of vocabulary. So this is very good Hebrew. Hu ochel et ha'ochel. Right? That's how you would say it. He eats the food. And so it's very important when you're learning modern Hebrew, and I put this at the end just before I get to last few minutes of questions, is the emphasis is important. This general default in modern Hebrew is that the accent is on the second to last syllable, right? It's not on the last syllable. Second to last, ochel. So that's going to come up quite a lot. In verbs, it's usually in the present tense, it's usually the last syllable. It really depends on the word, but you will hear the difference. Actually, I can think of quite a number of exceptions to the rule for that. So it's very important when you're learning Hebrew to listen to how the instructor is telling you. So ochel is food as in a noun, and ochel is eats as in a verb. Okay. All right, I'm going to stop here. I see we have a bunch of questions. I'm going to try to get to as many of them as possible that I can. Someone asks, is a duchan like a kiosk? Great question. Duchan is a stand, like we said very much at the beginning. Kiosk is a loan word that we have here in Hebrew, kiosk. Kiosk is oftentimes a freestanding structure, but it usually has a roof. Duchan, a stand, doesn't usually have a roof. So here in Israel, in Tel Aviv, for example, the first kiosk, the first store was on Rothschild, and it's very much, it looks like a little gazebo. It has a little roof, pointed roof. It's an octagon in shape, and that's called a kiosk because it's freestanding like a duchan, but it has a roof. A duchan can just be a stand. It can literally just be a table that you set up. A kiosk is slightly different, but those words will get used pretty interchangeably at the same time. Okay. Alan asks, is the checkout counter a duchan? No, a duchan is a stand. It is not the checkout counter. The checkout in Hebrew is a kupa. Kupa is both the till, but it's also the checkout is called kupa. Okay, yes, what is a kiosk in the mall? It's the same as a stand. Again, duchan, kiosk are used interchangeably more often than not. What do you call a convenience store at a gas station? It is called a convenience store. It's called a chanut, the store, nochut. Nochut is convenience, right? So a chanut, nochut is a convenience store. Usually it's just called a chanut, a store, but it also can be called a chanut nochut, a convenience store or a comfort store, in a way that you can do it. Okay, Ken asks, I've been in Netanya 4 months and have not bargained in the shuk. Should I? Great question, Ken. You're not expected to bargain in the shuk. Don't think of the shuk, especially when you go for fruits and vegetables, as a place where you're going to need to haggle or bargain. If you're buying something, the price is clearly marked what it is. You can certainly negotiate if you're buying a lot of food, or if it's like 10 shekel and 20 agorot, and you don't have 20 agorot on you. Instead of getting 80 agorot in change, you can negotiate with the guy to make it 10 shekel, or 11 shekel if he throws in something else. But you're not expected to haggle, to bargain by default. Okay. How do you spell the plural of shuk? The word is shvakim. You won't normally see it spelled out, but it's shin vav vav yud mem. Shin vav vav kuf yud mem. Shvakim. Okay. Why is the lamed in lekuchot pronounced le and not la? Very complicated grammar. We don't have enough time for it, but it's lekuchot. Mark asks, is food prices fixed everywhere? No, it is not. Again, there are certain products that have pikuach, have government supervision, government subsidy prices. The government makes sure that that price fixes it. Sometimes it's by paying for part of it. Sometimes it's not. So that's an important word to know. And again, bargaining is not expected everywhere. It's oftentimes considered very rude to do that. If you're going to a shuk and you're buying, like only a few tomatoes or cucumbers or things like that, you're not buying a huge amount, it's not necessarily expected on you to be doing it. And I would also say on a cultural level, if your Hebrew is not fluent enough, don't haggle. It's considered actually quite rude to start haggling, because oftentimes people who haggle think you have to be very aggressive in how you do it. That's only one tactic in haggling. And if you come off as very rude and aggressive, you often will get a similar response by the store owner. It is not expected for you to haggle. There are some products where you are, but when we're talking about just foodstuffs, and certainly a store in a mall or a regular grocery store or supermarket, you are not expected to haggle. It actually is not even tolerated, as Mark uses the word. No, Howard, great question. Mifsa only means a sale. It does not mean to sell. It is not to S-E-L-L. It is not the act of selling something. It is something that is on sale. That's the only meaning of it. To sell something is a very different word. That is limkor. You can look that word up on your own, but that is not a sale as in something is discounted. A general selling of something is mechira, but a mifsa is something that is on sale. Okay. John asks, can you use the word bli instead of lo? Sometimes yes, but oftentimes no. The expressions that I gave you here in the list, right, for non or dash free is only with lilo. So if you want to say lilo gluten, gluten free, you would not see on a label, it would never say bli gluten. It would always say lilo gluten. You'll have to learn when these are used, but you'll figure it out. Lilo is used quite a lot. Yes, bleed simply means without, but it's used in different contexts. You'll learn how they're used, but typically when we're talking about food products, ingredient labels, it's always going to be lilo. Without, non, free, all those things we say in English. Chomei gelem, someone asks, is not the same as organic. If you want to look for something that's organic, it will say in Hebrew, organi, or organi. Chomei gelem is not the same thing. Great question. Okay. See a lot of people giving further insight, which is awesome. Thank you so much for that. But I'm trying to get to people's direct questions. And unfortunately, we're running out of time. Let me just quickly read here. Quantities of fruits bagged and prepackaged, can you select your own? Mark asked a great question about fruits and vegetables. When you come to Israel, just like in other countries, you get most of your products, you can bag yourself, but there are products that are prepackaged. That word in Hebrew is Aleph Resh Vav Zayin Aruz. La aruz is to pack something, and you will often see things that are aruz or in a ma'araz, in a package, but not all things are. Just like in other countries, it very much varies from one place to another. Okay, let me just quickly see if there are other very basic questions that have to do with what we're talking about here. We said word for that. Okay, I see we have a lot of questions for a lot of great upcoming topics that I'm happy to turn into full classes. But in the meantime, unfortunately, we do have to cut it short here. Again, toda rabah, thank you very much. You will get a recording of this on Nefesh B'Nefesh's YouTube channel. You'll be able to follow along at your leisure, follow it with your will. I see a few people have issue with hearing. There'll be automated captions, just like you have on YouTube all the time if you can't follow along as such, but you will get it on Nefesh B'Nefesh's page. Toda rabah, thank you so much for joining. Next week, we'll be back at the same time with a different topic. If you have any topics in mind that we haven't covered in the past that aren't on the YouTube channel, that aren't included in the Q&A here and in previous sessions, please send it to Nefesh B'Nefesh. We'll be happy to go over a whole bunch. We have a few specific topics coming up, but we're always open to new topics to go into. So thank you very much again for joining. Lihitraot. We'll see you all very soon.